Eysenck's factor theory. The personality theory of Hans Eysenck has strong psychometric and biological components. However, Eysenck contended that psychometric sophistication alone is not sufficient to measure the structure of human personality, and that personality dimensions arrived at through factor analytic methods are sterile and meaningless unless they have been shown to possess a biological existence. Criteria for identifying factors. With these assumptions in mind, Eysenck listed 4 criteria for identifying a factor. First, psychometric evidence for the factor's existence must be established. A corollary to this criterion is that the factor must be reliable and replaceable. Other investigators, from separate laboratories, must also be able to find the factor, and these investigators consistently identify Eysenck's extroversion, neuroticism, and psychoticism. A second criterion is that the factor must also possess heritability and must fit an established genetic model. This criterion eliminates learned characteristics, such as the ability to mimic the voices of well-known people or a religious or political belief. Third, the factor must make sense from a theoretical view. Eysenck employed the deductive method of investigation, beginning with a theory and then gathering data that are logically consistent with that theory. The final criterion for the existence of a factor is that it must possess social relevance, that is, it must be demonstrated that mathematically derived factors have a relationship, not necessarily causal, with such socially relevant variables as drug addiction, proneness to unintentional injuries, outstanding performance in sports, psychotic behavior, criminality, and so on. Hierarchy of behavior organization. Eysenck recognized a 4-level hierarchy of behavior organization. At the lowest level are specific acts or cognitions, individual behaviors, or thoughts that may or may not be characteristic of a person. A student finishing a reading assignment would be an example of a specific response. At the second level are the habitual acts or cognitions, that is, responses that recur under similar conditions. For example, if a student frequently keeps at an assignment until it is finished, this behavior becomes a habitual response. As opposed to specific responses, habitual responses must be reasonably reliable or consistent. Several related habitual responses form a trait, the third level of behavior. Eysenck defined traits as important permanent personality dispositions. For example, students would have the trait of persistence if they habitually complete class assignments and keep working at other endeavors until they are finished. Although traits can be identified intuitively, trait and factor theorists rely on a more systematic approach, namely factor analysis. Trait-level behaviors are extracted through factor analysis of habit-level responses, just as habitual responses are mathematically extracted through factor analysis of specific responses. Traits, then, are defined in terms of significant intercorrelations between different habitual behaviors. Most of Cattell's 35 normal and abnormal primary source traits are at this third level of organization, which accounts for the fact that he identified far more personality dimensions than either Eysenck or advocates of the 5-factor theory. Eysenck concentrated on the 4th level, that of types or superfactors. A type is made up of several interrelated traits. For example, persistence may be related to inferiority, poor emotional adjustment, social shyness, and several other traits, with the entire cluster forming the introverted type.